Hi, everyone. My name is Laura Murphy. I'm here on behalf of the National Technology Alliance. I want to welcome everyone here. Thanks so much for joining us for this webinar, MOSA as a Combat Capability, Implementing Open Standards for Mission Success. If you have questions throughout the webinar, we really invite you to ask them. Our guest speaker today has made it clear he's really interested in the engagement and helping support as much responsiveness to the questions you have as possible. So you have a control panel kind of icon or section that is for questions. If you can just use that, feel free to drop them in anytime. And when he's done speaking, then we will get to those and get through as many as we can. So on to the good stuff. I'm joined by Jacob Glassman. He's the Senior Advisor and Special Assistant to the Assistant Secretary of the Navy. While he's here in his personal capacity today, we'll still get all the value of his vast experience, and we're excited to have him here. So Jacob, I'll turn it over to you.
All right, thank you so much, and thank everyone for the opportunity to speak. MOSA is something I'm extremely passionate about, and as we kind of go through the talk today, is this is a new way of looking kind of what MOSA really means. We've been talking about it for quite some time, years. It's been NDAA, it's been Title 10, it's been instructions, etc. But we haven't really grasped until I think recently why it's so important. We know that it's an important thing, but we don't fully know why. So I'm hoping to kind of change the conversation here and hoping I can get help from the community here to start changing on why we really need to adopt MOSA. So I'll start with a little bit with my background. Why are you listening to me today is kind of important. My current role is I'm a senior technical advisor to ASN RD&A. That's a senior acquisition executive for the Navy and the Marine Corps. My specialty is modular open system architecture. My background is I'm a Navy engineering duty officer specialized in submarine combat. So the submarine combat control system, SWIFT, submarine warfare federated tactical system, excuse me. That was pretty much the pioneering effort in the Navy on modular open system architecture. So I've taken that and then moved on through my government career up now at the Pentagon, advising multiple programs, and I'll get to that. So if you head to the next slide for me, please. So, trying to meet everyone where they're at. Here I have, I'm not going to read the slide to you all, but on the left here is the system definition of MOSA, but I want to hit a little bit on the key attributes. I tried to boil it down to, before we even get to MOSA as a combat capability, is what does it really do? What were we able to do in the submarine community that we're now expanding to the other platforms and other weapon systems? What does MOSA actually do for us? Well, I'll start at the top. Facilitates rapid technical refresh. So in the submarine community, we have a new combat baseline every 2 years. Now you have a submarine which has a life of anywhere from 26 to 30 plus years in service. So now you have every 2 years, and you have a new combat system available. So you have something where all that capability. Think of how much you refresh your iPhone, for example. You can get a new one every 2 years and have a whiz bang camera, new AI, all this stuff. You're not stuck with, my iPhone is now how God knows how old, right? So our platforms are out there and they're getting new payloads. We've integrated UUVs, submarine launch unmanned aerial system, those types of things, for example. So by having a well-defined architecture with very well-known and governed standardized interfaces, we're able to bring that type of capability to in-service platforms. Now, there's another advantage to that, not to skip around too much on the attributes, but the last one bullet I put there, I really should have coupled them together. But the real advantage to that, one of the other real advantages is from your sustainment viewpoint. So every 6 years, a submarine will get a new combat system. we have a new baseline every 2 years, and about a third of the fleet, approximately, give or take, will get that combat system. So fast forward 6 years, you're replacing the combat system on SSN, whatever. Well, so now think about my sparing. So not only am I getting more advanced capability because it's 6 years newer and Moore's law, we know how much more capability we're going to get. Um, Now we're able to take, instead of maintaining old systems, and anyone in this business has been there and done that in terms of, hey, I need to find a Pentium 4 processor for the whatever system on this. So I'm going to be going on eBay, or there's going to be a giant stack of it at NavSup or something like that. It's like, no, no, no. You're going to replace that anyway, so you don't really need that much sparing. Enough sparing in general, but I'm going to be tearing that whole thing out. I'm going to be replacing the whole thing anyway. And oh, by the way, anything that's left over when I tear it out, that's now my sparing for whatever is left in the fleet. So not only are you, so you have that obsolescence avoidance, you're able to have that rapid tech refresh, but you're also able to be much more dynamic and flexible. So it's really, I can wax poetic about it a lot. So the second bullet there, able to share modules and components among multiple applications. So, for example, our combat system was shared not only amongst all the different classes of submarines. So an SSBN, a Ohio class boomer, has the same combat system as a brand new Virginia class Block 4 attack submarine. Our system also operated on the Collins class diesel boat. So that just shows the flexibility of this well-defined interfaces and an architecture that can support all these types of systems. So it's really, really a powerful thing. Enables an industrial base, and I'll get to this a little bit later in our catapult project that we're spearheading right now with the Office of Naval Research, ONR. But if I have well-defined interfaces and a good modular architecture, I don't necessarily need a giant prime contractor to build absolutely everything. So now, if I'm able to, I can now stimulate a lot of small business, non-traditional defense contractors, et cetera, where there's a significant amount of innovation and I'll say from an acquisition standpoint, cost competition. I'm now able to break different components of the major system out and now have different organizations, different sizes of business, maybe even multiple businesses compete for them. So again, going back to the submarine background, or I'll go to actually even more recent example when I headed up hypersonics at the Conventional Prompt Strike program. We had a small business develop our conformal antennas. So think about that, a major billion-dollar weapon system with a conventional prompt strike hypersonics. Well, now we had an open architecture to be able to enable a small business to have a conformal antenna that can operate in those environments. So it really is able to tap into that innovation and also really expand our industrial base. And or enables what I'm dubbing a distributed industrial base, and I'll get to that in a little bit. Um, I've already talked about lowering the barrier of entry for a small business. Like, how would a small business be able to try and compete for a hypersonic glide body? They're not going to be able to. But if they're given the opportunity to, maybe they can make battery cells and conformal antennas. And those are things that we have actually done. So, really, really, really powerful architectures. And I'd say, lastly, it lowers your development cost. And this goes with the second bullet too, because you're now, and I'll get into what we're doing with the Army in the helicopter sphere, but you now can share capabilities, right? Instead of all of us be developing very similar capabilities, think communications, electronic warfare, navigation, alternate navigation, all these types of components, instead of everyone developing it separately, completely in their own silo, and it's mostly the same thing. Well, now what if I had a common architecture between all these airframes, and now I can now have multiple organizations now try and solve that problem. How do I navigate a helicopter in a denied environment? Well, here's a solution, here's a solution, and here's a solution. And they all conform with your architecture they're sharing. So maybe I can use all of them, maybe just one of them is good or somewhere in between. But it doesn't matter because as much because now I can now rapidly um, promulgate that. And that's really the hooks on why it is a MOSA is a combat capability. Next slide, and I'll go directly into that. So uh, this is where the discussion has changed with MOSA, and Ukraine has been a very big driver of that. So I've been a MOSA proponent, advocate, champion, whatever you want to call it, for close to 20 years now. And for that whole amount of time, we've been focusing on several different arguments on why MOSA. Uh, I just went through all the bullets before, but we say, hey, listen, this is what private industry does. We should be aligning with their best practices. You know, you have a universal serial bus, for example, on your computers. You don't have individual plug. Even Apple now has the USB-C, right? So that's an example of an open architecture. So, and that it's in our everyday lives. So why would we do it? Why wouldn't we do it there? And then we go, well, you know, it should save money because now instead of us all doing the same thing multiple times, just slightly differently, we can now align around the architecture, like I brought up the example earlier. And it should save you schedule too, because now you could go so much faster. So these are the arguments that we have been uh, fighting with for full MOSA adoption for close to 20 years, and we have made progress, but we really haven't made it. And a lot of us in the MOSA community have been kind of I don't want to say dumbfounded on why, but really, at least I'll speak for myself, very shocked about the institutional inertia for full MOSA adoption. And I'm in the Department of Defense, so I'm in the government, so maybe I shouldn't be as surprised by that, but it is true. So I thought more, we thought more about it and say, okay, what? Um, let's look at what's going on in Ukraine. And here is the open source example. There are other examples out there that are on the high side, but we'll just talk about this one. And I have links everywhere here. So this is just right from Business Insider. So this isn't any inside Pentagon knowledge. This is open source. Um, but we were delivering 500-pound JDAMs to Ukraine to fight the Russians, and in a relatively short amount of time, the Russians were able to deploy low-cost commercial countermeasures that would be able to render the JDAMs ineffective and stop using them. Well, that's a major shift. The other ones I can't talk too much about, but I'm sure you can find out on your own. But the rapid introduction of new low-cost commercial capabilities for offensive, like drones. Again, this is all over the news, so you don't need to hear this from me. So thinking about that and how quickly this technology and these countermeasures and these new offensive capabilities enter the theater, it is incompatible with our acquisition system. Our acquisition system takes years and years and years. Um, so, one of our biggest use cases for rapid deployment of a critical capability was the up armored MRAPs during the global war on terror, and how quickly we're able to turn to and break off, basically ignore a lot of our acquisition regulations or waive them, whatever you want to say, to be able to counter the IED threat. Well, that was close to 20 years ago. The technology has changed dramatically. So this is now MOSA is now no longer just all those great things I said before, but it is truly a combat capability because how are you going to be able to deal with a such a technologically flexible and uncertain battlefield in the 21st century? the only way to do it is to be able to adopt architectures where you can rapidly transition capability, offensive and defensive. And thankfully, we have a way to do that. It's called MOSA. We've had it the whole time. So whenever I get pushback on, hey, for this program, I'm looking at my CDD or CPD, and I don't see a MOSA requirement or open architecture requirement. What's the requirement for this? I've heard that countless amount of times. Well, this is now my argument. The requirement is we need to be flexible on the battlefield to deal with this threat. It is actually a combat capability to be able to adopt this. And the more more one looks into this, the more it becomes actually, at least in my opinion, quite obvious that if we don't have flexible technological systems in order to facilitate 21st century war, uh, we're going to be at a severe disadvantage. I'll put it there. Next slide, please. Now, luckily, now I'm a big student of history. Uh, what I'm saying is actually nothing new. We called it different things, but on the left, I just come up with some fun examples from World War II. I have family roots to both of both of these weapon systems, but earlier I talked about a distributed industrial base and the M1 carbine program where you had 10 different manufacturers, including Rockola Jukebox and all this stuff. This is Arsenal Democracy 101 was able to produce over 6 million of these things. Well, they had interchangeable parts. They had well-defined interfaces. They had the ability to mix and match and be able to mass produce these in an incredibly efficient way. And to me, that's a good example of this distributed industrial base. So instead of having these very large monolithic, huge programs that only one, maybe two, possibly three giant companies can handle, well, how does that scale? How do we cope with, okay, we have our peacetime production levels. How do we deal with the 5x, 10x, maybe 100x in production? That's going to be really hard for one or two or three very large companies to be able to scale like that. So what a distributed industrial base enables you to do is to utilize that architecture and now have different modules produced at different locations, different companies, etc. Maybe multiple different companies. So now instead of having one perfectly tuned, optimized industrial base for um, peacetime quantities like we have now, well, maybe I now have a dozen or a couple dozen production lines that are lukewarm and each able to scale should we enter conflict. So I like bringing the M1 carbine up for that. Radar rope. I always have to say this one. It saved my grandfather's life in the Second World War over Japan, and this was an example of well-defined interfaces that I like to bring out because radar rope, for those who don't know, is essentially chaff. It is radar reflective material that comes out and confuses radar from targeting. So when the B-29 was created, that wasn't a thing. Radar wasn't really that much of a thing, definitely not from a requirement standpoint. And the British actually originally came up with radar rope. Well, thankfully, we had well-defined interfaces, an external tube that was actually originally for photography for cameras, and that became the jettison system for this chaff, so or radar rope. So there's an example of an interface that was very, very flexible to be able to do that. Maybe I'm stretching, but it's one of my favorite examples, so I use that. Um, Okay, so that's the good news. Most of the combat capability is actually not a new concept. It's not something that a bunch of geniuses at MIT came up with. It is actually something that's been around for quite a amount of time. We just either forgot about it or we just really haven't thought about it that way in a long time. So what are we doing today? luckily, I brought up BYG-1, the submarine combat control system. I've already waxed poetic about that on how we're able to, how that is a good example of MOSA, and also how we're able to use next generation new architectures for our next generation air dominance. So being able to use systems to be able to share capability amongst there is really important. Next slide, please. So I wanted to leave a lot of time for Q&A. I try and make this more engaging, not just talk at you guys, but there's a few things I wanted to leave you off with. So that picture down below is, it's one of my biggest achievements from the last year, is the Navy's first Department of the Navy Open Architect, MOSA, Modular Open System Architecture Implementation Guide was signed out by Secretary Gerton, and that has been, it's the 1.0 version. So the concept is, hey, we're going fast. We made that in 3 months ish. And the idea is, hey, we know there's gaps here. It's not in stone. It's not perfect, but we will be able to get industry feedback, not just government feedback on, hey, I want industry feedback as well, like, hey, this was useful, this was not useful, etc. So we could start refining it. We're handling it almost like a tech program where really the 3.0 version is considered your first real viable product. The 1.0 is kind of like a beta trial. So think about that way. Um, on the left there, I have some shameless plugs for myself. So I wrote an article with Secretary Gerton. MOSA is a combat capability on the bottom left. So pretty much everything that I'm saying right now. But if you'd like it for reference or to read that or some additions that Secretary Gerton put in, you can look there. And I also had an article, I'd be remiss if I should have mentioned this a little bit earlier, is our Catapult program. So this is a rapid small business program that we're an award right now. And what these are is getting small businesses direct to phase twos to be able to deliver prototypes within 18 months to a major platform, a naval platform. Why am I talking about that here? Well, because each one involves MOSA. Each one is either leveraging MOSA capability or is introducing a MOSA capability to an existing platform that is one of the SecNav's major combat priorities. So it's really, really important. And that also goes into our what I was saying earlier about having a distributed industrial base. And here we are. It's not Lockheed or Boeing's or Northrop's. These are now we have I think there's 17 awards that are going to be going out for that, all small business. So really, really important. And on the left, I've added a couple links. The other thing I was pretty proud of is I was able to get the MOSA Tri-Service memo signed by each secretary, Secretary of the Air Force, Secretary of the Navy, Secretary of the Army, to collaborate on modular open system architectures and align them to be able to share capability amongst them. So for your reading pleasure, that's there. And OSD, I worked with OSD R&E. On their MOSA guide. So there it is right there. And their website, the OSDRNE MOSA website, has a litany of links on it for all different types of things, the MOSA contracting guidebook, et cetera. So I wanted to leave you all with references, including ones that I think are most pertinent. Um, but to finish
Great.
off, just my quick closure before I'll take questions is really, I could definitely. Why am I really excited to talk to you all? I'm really trying to hammer home that MOSA is a combat capability. I know I'm being redundant, but I'm doing that on purpose. It is really, really important. I think the more everyone thinks about it, definitely knows this business, knows that if we don't really get serious about adopting these architectures for our mission systems, we will be way too inflexible for the next fight should it come. So thank you all.
All right. Awesome. Thank you so much. That is, even for a lay person such as myself, it's this is incredible to not only have the historical framework, but also just kind of looking at it from the past all the way to prospective future and the impacts that this will have. So I really appreciate the perspective you've given. And we do have a number of questions coming through, so I'll just dive right into those. So the first one is from Matthew, who asked, is there a preferred method, framework, software tool, any of those, for enabling and implementing MOSA?
So good question. So one thing we've done in the Navy implementation guide, which you guys have, right? You can distribute that, is we actually look at different functional areas. So between rotary wing, surface ships, et cetera. And I'm not going to say, oh, SOSA or WOSA is the way to go for everything, this and that. It really is pretty, it has been there are really several that are out there that are fantastic. They all kind of have their different things, but what we're doing is we're trying to line programs up in the functional areas to be able to do that. I don't know if that fully answers the question, but fundamentally, following MOSA principles with how you do your development. I can also go. I don't think I have enough time here. It'll be a whole different seminar to talk about model-based systems engineering and kind of how that plays into it, and digital acquisition, kind of what we're doing with those types of things. But fundamentally, it is how are we able to have well-defined interfaces and distributed architectures that you can take pieces in and out, et cetera, and be able to move them around like Lego blocks, to go really layman with it.
Great, thank you. Our next question is from Jason, who asked, what's the balance between open architecture and security when adversaries, bad actors, can see or discover vulnerabilities in architecture?
Good question, and I've dealt with this a lot on the cybersecurity bit. So. Um, we are developing all of our systems as zero trust. That's the only way to really go about it. Um, I think we tried to hide our architectures quite a bit, made them all secret or whatever, because, well, if the bad guys know my architecture, well, then I'm going to have a lot more vulnerabilities. I mean, this also happened in the commercial world. If you compare, say, Linux development, where you had open source kernels, to Windows development, which is all closed off, right? Did it make Windows that much more secure than Linux? I would argue no, it really didn't in the end of the day. Um, I know that's debatable either way. So um, I guess my argument is you're doomed either way, and that's where zero trust comes in. So we might as well go to adopt architectures, open architectures that we have as open source, not necessarily open source, but that is open to all the different developers. Will the adversary understand our say, hey, you got this architecture, is what it looks like? Yeah, yeah, they are. But that's where the zero trust really, really comes in. And in a lot of ways, and we did this in the Swiftest world, when you're able to containerize different applications, which MOSA enables, you're much more able to deal with remediate detection or remediation of a capability. Again, this is probably a whole different seminar or talk or whatever. But if I'm able to have a module, everything modularized, and I'm able to detect when that one or multiple modules are infected or have issues, I'm much more able to respond by shutting them down, or quarantining them. So, but as far as the cybersecurity concern, it is a concern, 100%. I'm not diminishing that at all, but we have to line up with common architectures if we're going to be able to. I can't. I don't think we can any longer let that be a reason why we can't uh, line up architectures and be open with them.
Hmm. That makes sense. All right, our next question Matthew asked, is the Catapult program closed or still accepting proposals?
Catapult, this 1.0 has closed. So we should have awards. I think some were announced last week, of the 17.
Hmm.
The intent is this would be uh, an annual thing, where the um, combat focus areas of the SecNav and the acquisition and technical needs or priorities of the Assistant Secretary for Research Development and Acquisition, my boss, ASN RD&A, get aligned into what those topics are. So
Mhm.
um, we'll see. We have a new administration, as I'm sure most of you are aware. So, but the intent was that Catapult would be an annual activity. So I can't commit to any future thing given the political environment right now and the budget authority right now. For the continuing resolution, but that is at least the intent.
Okay, great. Thank you. We had a couple questions about that, so that's helpful. Um, Sort of in the same vein, Dustin asked, does MOSA help in an SBIR application?
Oh, 100%. And Catapult's an example of that. From a development standpoint, so you can look at it from two ways from an SBIR standpoint. You can look at it from the performer. If you're a performer and you win an SBIR, why would you want MOSA, right? There's almost like a perverse incentive, at least for the larger companies, to adopt MOSA because, well, now that introduces competition. I'd argue, personally believe it's a force multiplier. You still have your SBIR data rights, um, but now you can partner with large companies, whatever, to start bringing in additional capabilities. So now, much more easily, and you can also leverage existing modules potentially throughout the enterprise elsewhere. I've had, for example, the one Catapult project that we're awarding through SSP for the hypersonic program. They're using Air Force certain Air Force modules in their capability. They're like, hey, why would I need to reinvent that? And I can now be more competitive because now here is a capability that the government already has government purpose rates on, and I can add that to the work that I'm already doing. You add significantly more value. So I think absolutely. I also think as we start getting better at aligning architectures between different programs, instead of having kind of these cottage SBIR bases around certain PEOs or program offices. Well, okay, maybe you lose maybe you've been in that kind of field for P8. I'm just picking something for Nav Air, but you've never competed for the submarine or for a destroyer. Well, one of my catapult projects is to align those three. So maybe we're used to only working with P8, Nav Air, never talked to Nav C, never talked to PEO, UWS. Well, all of a sudden now you're competitive because your system can work, your capabilities can work on that architecture. You can now compete for those other platforms as well. So I personally see, I don't run a small business, but from my viewpoint of working with multiple SIBRs over a very long time, I've seen it be a significant help.
All right, great. Thank you. Next question comes to us from Robert, who asked or says the tri-service memo, original and the new one, both mention certain standards. What about other standards that consider themselves as MOSA, such as UMAA?
hmm Um, yeah, bringing me back. I'm one of the plank owners for UMAA. Like I said, there's multiple MOSA architectures. There's not one ring of Sauron to rule them all here. And that's why we're divvying them up, so to speak, into different functional areas. And you'll see that in the MOSA Implementation Guide 1.0, where we have a table that actually lines all that up that says, hey, you're working in the unmanned field or you want to compete in the unmanned field. Here are a list of architectures. UMAA is on it, and here are the references for it. Right. So now as a competitor or also on the government side, you're a new person in PMS 406, you're putting out a new capability, you say, oh, well, I want to be open architecture because Jake's really annoying at the Pentagon, keeps talking about it. I don't even know where to start. Here is your reference. It's right there. So um, I don't know how satisfying that answer is, but we're not going to be able just to say from a top down. you're all using FACE or AMS or SOSA or WOSA, because then we'll just completely destroy the system and really destroy the progress we've already made. So what we're trying to do is there are already these consortiums and communities around SOSA, around FACE, around UMAA, around AMS. And okay, let's not fight them, let's join them and start lining these things up. So we're not perfect, but I mean, again, that's why I'm here. I wouldn't be here talking to you all if we had it all perfect. So I hope that answers the question.
Yeah, okay, great. Thank you. If it didn't, then feel free to ask a follow-up. We're available to keep the conversation going. All right, the next question comes from Nate, who asked, coming from small business. So when I develop, well, I guess let me back up the first part here. Follow up here. So I can fully understand the benefits of MOSA. How do you envision implementation from a small business? So this kind of speaks to common interfaces a little bit, but for example, when I develop a drone, I want to be able to use different types of payloads to drop in. Having a standard is great, but do we decide it, or is there something I can just design to? And this also kind of speaks, Nate, you may have interest in a prior webinar recording we did with WOSA, so with U.S. Air Force. So you could check that out on the website at nta.org as well. But go ahead, Jacob, let us know what you think.
Yeah, I know. I think you actually answered it perfectly. I think the most implementation guide is a great place to start. I I guess there's two part. One, I would always develop with MOSA principles, no matter what, whether it's an existing one or not, because it's much easier for you to transition from one open architecture to another than it is from this monolithic crazy design. But specifically with payloads, that's again why I fought so hard and kind of had this table in the Navy MOSA implementation guide. And I believe I got to remember the OSD one as well that I helped with. I think they adopted the same table, but it's in there. And that if you're a small business, you're like, hey, I'm making drones, and I want to be able to have be able to plug and play multiple different payloads. Well, let's see what's on the list. Maybe AMS works for you. You know, that's what the aircraft or the next six gen aircraft is going to be using. So maybe you go there. Maybe FACE, the future air combat environment. Maybe that works. Maybe that would work for you. And now you're adopting all these other stuff too. Or maybe you're like, okay, well, listen, none of that works for me. I'm an aircraft. Let me look at this UMAA stuff. It was originally designed for unmanned surface vehicles, but maybe I can utilize that as well and be UMAA compliant. That way, payloads that are developed on that or subsystems of that I can start adopting. So, um, great question, and that's why I put those references on there. So, one, I highly encourage to always use MOSA principles, even if you're doing your own design. But two, highly encourage you to look at the implementation guide and see what architectures are existing and out there for you to be able to collaborate with others, especially as a small business.
Okay, great. Thank you. Another question comes in from Andrew, who asked, for someone who is working on road mapping, implementing a product that will need to be MOSA, and then he says OMS UCI most likely compliant, what is the best forum to engage and start participating in to ensure our design decisions scale with the DoD? There seem to be multiple departments engaged in this.
There are, I think it would depend on where you're. If it's Nav Air, I'd always point you to PMA 209, for example. If you're a Nav C, CO5, for example. But there's different MOSA communities of practice. The FACE Consortium and the OSA working groups are really good communities of practice. I would point you to, and they're all linked in those references that I have on that last slide. So. I I would highly encourage you to engage with that community, especially the OSA working group communities. There are MOSA advocates that make me look like a someone against MOSA. That's how fervent they are. Um, in multiple different communities, Air, Missile Defense Agency, Army, AFRL, etc. So those are really, really good references and very good networking to be able to say, okay, how are you checking compliance? What are you doing? And it allows a lot of teaming and transition opportunities.
Great, thank you. This next question comes from Valerie, who asks, how can the open standards industry and the DoD acquisition community work more closely together to improve the language used for requests for information, quotes, etc.? For example, the SOSA consortium would collaborate and help think in that area.
Yeah, I think the way Sosa does it is fantastic. Sorry, say the question again. Like, how do they collaborate better with industry?
How can open standards industry and the DoD acquisition community work more closely to improve the language in requests for information and quotes?
Um, Yeah, that is an issue we have because fundamentally a lot of our PMOs or program managers offices they end up being very siloed into what they're trying to achieve for those particular requirements, and they don't do as good of a job as we'd like to be able to respond to those types of things. So again, that is one of the reasons why just probably my 58th plug today for the Navy MOSA Implementation Guide 1.0 is we're trying to get that kind of feedback and be able to get it in the guidance. Say, hey, I keep asking for architectures and do RFIs and I get nothing back, or I get, nothing worthwhile back. Okay, well, that gives us something to work on from the ASN RD&A shop for guidance. So we have the ability to give feedback on the Navy MOSA implementation guide, but those consortiums like the SOSA, for example, or FACE, they're very, very good at being connected in with a lot of good people to be able to update that guidance. But I'll acknowledge the problem, and I mean that's again one of the reasons why I'm doing what I'm doing.
Absolutely. I think we have time to take another one, maybe two, we'll see. But Dan asked, which is the best or which are the best links and events to study the most opportunities that are open today? And I guess that's a good place to, or are there due dates that are coming soon? But I'm not sure what that last part means. So I think looking for resources for studying opportunities that are open now with um, a specific focus on links and events.
Um, I mean, I'd always point you to the SBIR program. That's where I've had the most success if you're a small business. Um, there's no small business or open architecture program, and it doesn't work that way. But that would really be the best way. The others would be, again, kind of what I said before, just be tied in with those communities, the SOSA community, the WOSA community, the FACE consortium, et cetera, because they get people like me and Mr. Girton and Dr. Seidel we speak at those things and we make announcements. I mean, that's where we announced Catapult last year. So those are really kind of the best things.
Awesome. I'd also like to add that we dropped a link in our chat for the upcoming MOSA Industry and Government Summit that will take place in August in National Harbor. That Tech Connect, NTA, ATI, we host it. So hope you can make it. Everyone who's here and engaged in this conversation. All right, we'll probably take this last question, which is from Ming, who said, are there potential downsides to a MOSA system? As we are designing products with MOSA architectures, what are important things we should take account of? So I'll leave it to you to answer that and sort of, well, that'll close us out for today.
Downsides, I think the cybersecurity part earlier is, a potential con, uh, something to absolutely consider. Um, Also, it can be more difficult. It really can. You have to be much more deliberate with your initial architectures. And there's no free lunch here. But again, I'm making the argument that this is necessary, and hence why I'm here. MOSA is a combat capability. So, yeah, no, I think really. The cybersecurity concerns are definitely real, definitely acknowledged, and something we just have to work through. The others is, yeah, your upfront work is going to be more than just starting with hello world. That's just how it's going to be. But your long run, you get all those benefits that pays it back and more.
Wonderful. I think that sums it up nicely. Thank you so much for being here and sharing your experience and your knowledge. We really hope to see you again soon and hear from you again, either here or at the event. And thank you so much to everyone who attended. We're honored to have your time, and we'll give it back to you now. So if you'd like to watch this afterward, it's going to be recorded and available at nta.org. And again, we'll see you in August at the MOSA Industry and Government Summit. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you all.